I feel like, there's a confidence within the team that's very strong. The developments we've been able to make in the last 24 months across the car have been, pretty remarkable. And I think the big thing for us is everything we put on the car has delivered what we expected. There's been certain points this season where the developments behind the scenes maybe didn't come quite as quickly as we would have liked. But once we were happy with them, we put them on the car and they worked as we wanted.
Oscar, thanks for joining us. Reflections on 2024. What are the highs or the low points of the season, mate?
The highs, definitely the 2 wins. The main high points. I think the podium in Monaco and just the weekend in Monaco was a very solid weekend. I was pretty happy with that. All the other podiums have been fun, but definitely the 2 wins stand out the most. And I think Baku to pick one is definitely the highlight of the year. Lows, there's been a couple of tricky races. China was a tricky weekend. Japan was a bit trickier than I expected as well. And the last few races sort of across America have been tricky for different reasons as well. So, a couple of trickier weekends than I would have liked, but they're not always going to go your own way.
What's it been like being part of a Constructors Championship? Because I imagine for a second-year driver, that's not common. It's a big step up from your rookie season. What's that experience been like?
It's been fun, to be honest. And in some ways, it's kind of back into familiar territory from a lot of my junior racing. So it's been cool. Obviously, there's a lot more at stake in Formula One in the Constructors Championship than any of the team's championships before, or even drivers' championships. But it's been a lot of fun to be part of, and it's why we go racing, to try and win and to try and win championships. So it's been cool to try and help the team win that. But yeah, it's been not too daunting or overwhelming for sure. It's been just a lot of fun, a satisfying thing to try and target.
Is it a useful sort of toe in the water for a driver's championship tilt? And is it any different, or how different is it to the junior category title fights that you had on your way into Formula One?
It's a bit different. Obviously, as drivers, we're very focused on the drivers' championship, but in F1, the team's championship or the constructors' championship means a lot more than any of the junior racing. Just because of, one, it's the pinnacle of the sport, but also then everything that's behind that. Especially the financial rewards, the sense of pride. We haven't won a constructors' championship in over 25 years, so there's a lot more behind it, I would say. And in terms of the drivers' championship, for a while, yes, I was always a long way behind, but for a while I was kind of keeping pace and making small inroads for a while. The last sort of few races towards the end of the year, didn't really go as hoped, and it kind of fell apart a little bit. But I think that certain points of the year there was a lot at stake, and there was still a faint belief that the championship could happen in a drivers' championship, but clearly that's not been the case in the end. But it's been nice to kind of experience that, firstly in the constructors' championship, but also in some kind of distant dimension, the drivers' championship too.
I wanted to ask you about that because Lad obviously went a little bit deeper in that competition than what you did. Were there lessons that you could learn watching him in the garage, I guess, being in that fight yourself for a period? Are there lessons that you can learn from this year that you can take forward to next year and be stronger next time you're in this scenario?
I think definitely. I think looking at Lando's championship bid, there's definitely been things that as a team we've learned a lot, and I think for myself I've learned personally from that. But I think even within my own, calling it a bid is maybe a stretch, but my own sort of championship for the year, there's been moments where it's kind of fallen away a little bit. I think obviously the first part of the season we lost a lot of points to Red Bull and Verstappen in the driver standings. So trying to claw that back's been incredibly tough for both of us. But I think definitely I've learned a lot of things. The pressures that come with the championship fight start to come back, which again is kind of a familiar feeling, but I think it's definitely amped up a little bit when you're trying to get a Formula One championship. So definitely a lot of lessons looking inwards, but also some lessons looking outwards as well.
We'll come back and talk a little bit about some of the on-track stuff, but I want to talk a little bit off-track. Australian plans for the off-season. Are you going to get a chance to have Christmas turkey at home?
I don't know about turkey, but I'll have a Christmas at home. So that'll be nice. Get some Aussie summer in as well. And it's pretty much my one time a year to see my friends and family back home. So it's always a nice time of the year and good to see everybody for a few weeks, hopefully. And also get out of the cold, which is nice too.
Absolutely. And maybe a nice new Lego set with an Oscar Piastri minifig under the tree.
Correct. I already have the minifigurine, so I've got to get the rest of the set now.
Are you a big fan of Lego? Do you have because McLaren's obviously got the relationship with Lego already. Do you have like the MP44, the Senna car, that sort of
I do actually. It's still unbuilt in the box, but I have it. So yeah, I need to build it. But to be honest, as a kid, I wasn't the biggest Lego constructor. Some of my friends and other not other siblings, they were all playing with Barbie dolls, but friends and stuff, they were probably more into Lego than I was. But it's cool to still have some around now.
It's a bit bizarre that you've now got an Oscar Piastri minifig.
Yes, very, very bizarre. I mean, there's a lot of things with my name on it or my face on it that are a bit weird, or just you wouldn't dream of as a kid. But it's cool. It's very cool.
We spoke there about the Senna car that's in Lego. McLaren's Heritage collection, and that's one of the cars that's part of that. It's an amazing collection. If Zach ever let you loose in the Heritage collection, which car are you making a beeline to? Because there's some amazing kit in there.
I mean, there's a few. For me, I kind of started watching F1 late 2000s, or I started properly watching and following it in early 2010s. So driving a car from that era, like Lewis's championship winning car from 08 would be very cool. But I think going a long way further back, driving the MP44, for example, would be very, very special. We had Friends and Family Day this year, and we got to drive some of the historics around the Lake Road at MTC, which was very fun, very scary, but it was very cool. And I've been lucky enough to drive one of James Hunt's cars. I'm pretty sure it's the 1976 car, which, again, fun, but incredibly scary, and very happy that I didn't have to race in F1 at that time.
Driving that sort of stuff, where would you like to do it? Because I imagine there's some amazing circuits out there. Would you want to go to something like a Nordschleifer and really test its metal, or do you want to go somewhere where there's nothing that you can hit?
Probably nothing that I can hit. I've driven in at Goodwood and around the Lake Road. Goodwood, there's obviously walls and it's, public driveway. The Lake Road, there's a lake that you can go into, so you can't really push it too hard. But somewhere like Silverstone would be cool. Just to see, I guess, the difference as well, especially in the fast corners, of how much the cars have moved on in terms of aero and downforce. I'm sure the thing would be ballistic in a straight line, but the corners would be interesting. But yeah, preferably somewhere where there's not too many walls.
Bring it back on to sort of today and then current Formula One. When we spoke at the very start of 2024, one of the things that you mentioned from your rookie season is that you wanted to work on time management and race management. That was sort of the glaring thing out of 2023. I think it's fair to say that you ticked that one off pretty well through 2024. Most recently, you've been talking about looking forward and working on your consistency. Now, time management and race management, I guess that's reasonably easy because it's experience, it's trying things within a box, so to speak. But consistency, how do you improve that? Because I guess the only way to improve your consistency is to be less consistent to an extent.
Yeah, it's I think the goals that I set myself after my first season, I feel like we've done a very good job in tackling those things. There's still been the odd race here or there where it's not been as straightforward as I would have liked in the race. But to be honest, I think a lot of it is coming from qualifying. This season, I feel like it's been a little bit of the opposite of last year, where I was there in qualifying, and I think this year I have been there, but it's always been just on the wrong side of being there, not on the right side. And the gap for a lot of the season's always been very close between Lando and I, but I've always been just behind. And there's been a few races where it's been a bit further behind, and it's cost me a few spots on the grid. And naturally, your life just gets much more difficult when that happens. So I think tidying that up and just making sure I'm starting in the right spot will go a long way in that, because I think last year, I could qualify pretty well, but it wasn't a certainty that I was going to stay there in the race. Whereas this year, there's been probably more races than not where I've actually made progress or had to make up ground for qualifying. So being more consistent there is probably the biggest thing, I would say. There's not really an easy way to do that. You're obviously driving on the limit, and it's very easy to make mistakes. So I think just tidying that up is probably the big thing.
How much better do you feel you are as a driver now than I guess what you were 2 years ago when you came into Formula One?
I would say I feel like I've definitely improved. I think especially in managing tires and races, and also just managing my life in some ways. I think the back end of my rookie season, I was pretty tired mentally. It's a long season and all these flyaway races. In some ways, you can't learn it until you've experienced it. And I feel like this year, I felt much better from that side of things, and managing my sleep, my energy, which kind of comes with knowing what to expect. But as a driver, I feel like, my races have been much better this year than last year. Qualifying maybe hasn't really improved as much as I would have hoped. But I think, this year I feel like there's been good moments in kind of every criteria that I need as a driver. It's just been not putting them together often enough. So I think, if I can tidy them all up, I felt like last season I was still missing some tools, so to speak. Whereas this year, I feel like I have all the tools. It's just using them all together more consistently, and hopefully that will bring me some more success.
You mentioned that you're trailing Lando a little bit, and I want to come to team rules or papaya rules or whatever it's called. For all the talk, Sao Paulo's for him was really the only time I had a meaningful or any significant impact in that you gave up a sprint wing. For all the talk, was too much made of that? Because it didn't seem to have much impact at all, really.
Yes, there was a lot more talk externally than there was internally. Of course, we discussed a lot of scenarios, but we had to kind of set the rules and the boundaries. But like you said, the only time it really came into fruition was Brazil in the sprint race. So there was a lot more talk about it than we had, let's say, which was, I get that people got to have some talk about, but yeah, it was made a lot bigger than it was within the team, and like that one instance really, and there was a lot of questions about, would I help, would I not help, and for me it was obvious from the start that I would. And I think after Brazil, yes, the championship then also became much tougher for Lando, but I think it reduced a lot of the noise when I actually let him through.
Yeah, I guess the fair point is that it went the other way as well. He helped in Baku as well. So after Hungary, Lando sort of said he felt bad for overshadowing your win with the way that unfolded. Now, that he came out and said that suggests to me that there was no sort of ill will or whatever there, and went for Macca's run that night, for instance. But that showed to me that there's an empathetic side there, and that what we saw and heard over the radio was very much adrenaline driven more than Lando's normal personality, and certainly from everything I've seen over the years, that's not the case. Is that a fair assessment that what we saw the days after Hungary is a more accurate reflection of Lando and yourself?
Yeah, I think so. Obviously in that situation, it's not an easy one, especially as a driver. At that point I didn't have a win, Lando only had one. So, giving up a win or being in a tricky situation where the team have swapped us around, trying to look at bigger interest than what we can see in the car. It's kind of tough to always understand in the moment. So I think, post-race, of course, the adrenaline dies down. You get a much better understanding of what the race picture looked like. And I think for both of us, we got a much better understanding that actually there were threats in our race. Hamilton was quick, and Verstappen was very quick on both on different strategies. So I think once we got some understanding of what was happening behind us, that relieved a lot of things. And our relationship's always been good, and that certainly didn't cause any problems.
Let's throw forward to next year. What's your read on 2025? Because certainly the end of 2024 was interesting and exciting from the outside.
Yeah, I think hopefully we can start the year off with a quick car. We've obviously had a very quick car at points this year, and sort of from Miami and Imola onwards, once we both got the upgrades, we've been maybe not necessarily the quickest car every weekend, but in contention to win, I would say pretty much every weekend from there. Ferrari have had a couple of very strong weekends, Mercedes as well, and obviously Red Bull have been quite up and down. So hopefully next year we can kind of start the year with the car that we've had for the second half of the season, and that would obviously put us in good contention. I think Ferrari will probably come out of the block strong. I think Red Bull and Mercedes are probably the two big question marks. Mercedes in the right conditions are ballistically quick, and Red Bull, or certainly Max, I think they've probably rediscovered a bit of form or a few things in the last part of the season. So I think it'll be more of the same probably in terms of, four teams really battling it out. But hopefully we can be in the fight from the start, and that'll make our constructors bid, and certainly the drivers' championship bid, a bit easier, I think.
Obviously, you don't know what the rivals are doing, so you don't know exactly where in that pecking order you might be. But from what you know of the 25 car, is McLaren going to be a contender?
I sure hope so. I feel like, there's a confidence within the team that's very strong. The developments we've been able to make in the last 24 months across the car have been, pretty remarkable. And I think the big thing for us is everything we put on the car has delivered what we expected. There's been certain points this season where the developments behind the scenes maybe didn't come quite as quickly as we would have liked. But once we were happy with them, we put them on the car and they worked as we wanted. And I think we're probably one of the only teams on the grid that can say, we've been happy with our correlation through the whole year. I think, Ferrari had a few struggles with correlation earlier in the year. Red Bull kind of still going through them towards the end. And Mercedes Vegas, for example, they were very, very fast, but I'm not sure they still know why. So I think for us, having that correlation and understanding is very important. Of course, you need the lap time to back it up, but hopefully we can continue that kind of confidence and correlation into next season, and that'll put us in good stead. Because I think, a lot of teams are trying, including us, trying different things in different directions, and the regs are getting so complicated, and the aerodynamics getting so complicated that they can often fall over themselves. So I think finding that limit is a very important thing next year.
Let's put you on the spot. Are you a title contender for next year?
I sure hope so. I feel like through this season, I've had quite a good run, especially through the European part of the season. And there's been a couple of tough races sort of either side of Europe. But I feel like compared to last season, or my rookie season, I've made a lot of progress. And even the tricky races this season have been a lot less tricky than what they were in my first year. I'm aware that there's still a lot of room to improve for myself, which is natural. But I feel like I said before, I feel like I have all the tools I need now. It's just being able to use them consistently. So, as long as I can do that, then I think I can be a title contender. Yeah.
Next year, you're not going to be the only Australian on the group. We've got Jack Doan joining you. You spent some time racing against him in your junior career. How do you think he'll get on?
I think Jack will hopefully do a good job. He's obviously had a similar kind of program to me when I was at Alpine in terms of doing some testing in an older car, and it's not quite the real thing, but it does help. So hopefully he can come out of the block strong. It's always nice to see fellow Aussies on the grid, and hopefully he can have a good start to life in F1.
What advice would you give, I guess not just to Jack, but to any youngster joining the grid? Because it is a huge step up from Formula 2. There's a lot of things that you do in Formula 1 that you don't in the junior categories. What advice would you give to Jack or any of the youngsters?
I think the biggest thing is just how much there is to learn, and how much experience helps. It's very different from the junior categories where you're often racing against the same guys through your whole career, or you're racing against guys that are in their second season in F2. Maybe there's a couple that are in their third season. But when you get to F1, kind of the least experienced guy you're going to race against is probably in his second or third season. And you've got people like Lewis or Fernando who are towards their 20th. So I think it's quite different from that side of things. And there's a lot of things to learn, just with kind of the things I experienced with, in terms of managing your energy, a lot of new circuits in the start and the end of the year, a very different way of going racing. So there's just a lot to learn. And I think trying to tackle that is the most important thing.
There's one question I'm interested to hear your thoughts on. It's a trend in Formula 1. If we wind the clock back 2 or 3 years, there was an appetite within teams to opt for experience over youth. And I guess you were first-hand exponent of that to an extent. Now that's been flipped, and you look at the likes of Jack Doan, Ollie Bannon, Tommy Antonelli, Gabriele Bortoletto, potentially Franco Colapinto. There's a significant change towards youth over experience. That sort of coincided with your own arrival in Formula 1 and, solidifying yourself here. You've won Grand Prix now. You've shown that young drivers have the skill. Do you think it's an oversimplification to suggest that your rise has broken down these barriers for some of these kids?
I'm not sure I'm going to take the credit for it, but I think, it's been a long time, I would say, since, before me, I guess, where a team that's been quite competitive has taken a rookie. And, even in my rookie season, we weren't competitive for the first 6 months, but by the end of the year, it's quite rare, or for really since Lewis, I guess, to have someone jump into a team that is capable of fighting right at the front as a rookie. So maybe I helped a little bit. Timing is a massive thing in F1. Some of the drivers that are ending their careers this season, getting a bit older and stuff like that, and timing just is a massive thing. You've seen in Behrman's case, he's had a few kind of auditions this season and obviously done a good job. So I think it's a case of timing, and maybe I was a demonstration in some ways, but I think there was a lot of people before me that kind of proved that, and it didn't necessarily help the guys I was racing with get to F1. So maybe there's a small part of it. I think timing is a very big part. Also going towards a new regulation as well. When I came into F1, we were coming into a very new regulation in terms of ground effect cars. And I think, a lot of teams wanted that experience across the jump, or especially once these ground effect cars came into play, they wanted experience because they were tricky cars to drive at the start, and they still are. But it now seems like a good time for, there's a lot of drivers that are getting older and to the end of their career, a lot of rookies that seem to be very promising. And also it's kind of the last time where you can get them in before the new regulations and get some experience under their belt. So I think it's more a case of timing than myself.
Thanks for tuning in to the KTM Summer Grill. With each episode, we are giving away one of these cool KTM goodie bags. Don't miss your chance to win. If you're watching via Speed Cafe, enter your details below. If you're watching on YouTube, the link is in the description.